interspersed between the stones and the deck. This garden is our blue and lime green garden, and this gravel level is tilted slightly towards the camera, which diverts water away from the back. This is a little brownstone lintel that I found in a pile of sand being thrown out in Hartford, sort of a found object thing. In this garden, we have a hay-scented fern, which is an interesting ground cover for sunny areas. Most ferns like shade, but this garden gets quite sunny. Another thing that might be of interest to your viewers, because this is the shady part of our lot, I planted it with lots of yellow-leafed plants to bring sunshine into a shady garden. That's a trick to yellow foliaged plants will bring sunlight into a garden. And I think the contrast between the blue or lavender blue plants and the yellow foliage is very pleasing. The little guy down there is the Green Man, who's sort of an iconic garden figure. This is another one of those little inexpensive water features. This is Terenia, which is a nice, just for blue color. It lasts all summer. It's an annual. It needs a lot of fertilizer. I just brought these into the garden and they have to be fertilized. The green and white variegated plant is one of the miscanthus or fountain grass. And those are beautiful for texture, and they last also into the winter. In the winter they look very beautiful. They move in the wind, and there's yellow and green, green and white, plain green, many different types of that. It's Miscanthus sinensis. This little light fixture is another sort of found object thing. I had given it to my niece, Dr. Clark, for one of her wedding presents, and she didn't care for it, so I made a outdoor lighting fixture, and at night it's absolutely beautiful, very quiet lighting. Ann Farrell did a beautiful Hartford Current piece on the lighting at this site. Sometime you'll have to come back and see it at night. Very nice. Another fun thing about this garden is that it's a round garden, and during the summer, and it's got very tall trees around it, so in July and August when the fireflies are out, it becomes sort of a little cathedral meditative garden to watch fireflies. And we also have nice lunches here. We put out a table, and it's a great place for summer lunches. This general area, or this garden, was built, I designed it and built it for my friend Wallace, who's 84 years old and lived in New York City and used to come on weekends. He still does come on weekends, and wanted to have a garden in the country to garden in. And the stone were rescued from the Stowe Center that were throwing them out years ago. The brownstone are just individually rescued. The Spike was a present to Wallace from his mom, and we named him Spike because we're being way out in the country here. We thought he looked a little bit too feminine, and we wanted to give him a little bit stronger of a name for the country. So this is Spike's garden, and the garden behind was a red, pink, and white themed garden. And now that Wallace is too old to garden in it, he comes to enjoy it and loves it. We've sort of let it become wild and romantic and overgrown. There are still lots of interesting periods of bloom in this garden. Early on, there's a salmon-colored quince and a light pink almond, which bloom. And then we have true geranium, which blooms. This is Stephanitis, I think, which was a gift from Mary Fletcher, who's a dear, beautiful lady who lives in Collinsville. She was first selectman of Collinsville, and I did some design and consulting work on her garden, and she's been a lifelong friend, and she donated that to the garden. There's later on there'll be white hydrangea, peony and daylilies, which will bloom in half shade, and Simisophusia or snakeroot, which also blooms in shade. And then the garden ends up with Japanese anemone in the late season, which is a beautiful, quiet plant which blooms really nicely in shade to half shade. Spike's actual baptismal name is Pan, and Pan is a classic garden element that's usually a little boy figure that's piping water. Later on in the season, we will connect up and that pipe to work, and it quiets the fountain down and makes a more subtle noise. This is another garden feature that was made very inexpensively with a little pot that goes in the ground, which is only about 2 feet diameter by 1 foot thick, and a little pump. And you can do $5,000 water features or $500 water features, but you can also do very, very simple, inexpensive water features that bring that feeling of water and the sound of water into your garden. This is just a little architectural feature from a Victorian house that I had in Hartford. The guy is May apple, which is allowed to go wild in this area. Hay-scented ferns, which do well in sun or shade, and Christmas fern. This is just a little water feature and shelf. And this is our little peaceful area at the end of the property. We do, when we have our sharing nature gardening groups and teaching groups, we usually end up having tea or soda here for the kids. And this is a peaceful place the gods have sent us to live in. We're here at the end of the property in one of the quiet places on this site. This little area was, this pineapple, or acorn actually, was a gift from Bob Schutz, who is a Hartford architect and a lifelong friend. And it used to live in his house on Prospect Avenue, which was a very interesting house. It was designed by Platt, who was a famous architect, landscape architect, and watercolorist. And he designed the house for Schuette's parents back in the early 1900s. And I admired this once at his house, and he said, "Rob, take it, take it." His house should have been left as a museum. It was an amazing, amazingly beautiful, complete Edwardian piece. This is the entrance garden, and we're going to say goodbye and thank you for coming to our gardens here. I just wanted to say one little thing about the entrance garden, which we're using as a goodbye place. This garden originally was going to be a blue and white garden, and the gods and nature decided that native flax loved it here and just started multiplying, so I let that go. And now in June, July, and August, there's this beautiful scented flax paniculata throughout this whole garden. These are my topiaries behind me. I think of them as my swans. My neighbors jokingly tell me that they're actually the chickens. So thanks very much for coming to the garden, and I think the neighbors may be shooting at us, so we should end. And hopefully next time we can see some other historic gardens and different kinds of gardens that we've designed. I thought you might enjoy. So thank you very much for coming to see this garden.